Hello, welcome back to JLXP, episode 33 all time, but only episode 2 of 2022. I am joined by a former colleague of mine at both TL and Riot Games, and previously I actually had your Twitter handle up so I could list like all of your accomplishments. I think you also have like father of two on there, which is cool. But yeah, welcome to the show. This is your first time on JLXP, actually?
It's actually the first time on JLXP because last time you did a bunch of solo episodes and didn't invite me on. So thank you very much for the invite.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're the first guest on the one back. Maybe many more, depending on how Reddit. I think Reddit will decide if there's
Reddit will dictate everything in terms of this show. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that Reddit just actually runs the LCS. That's a little known fact. But okay, that's not what this episode's about. This episode is about the ceilings and floors of the LCS team. So it's a little bit of an extension of the power ranking episode that I did, where I ranked TL first, 100 Thieves second, EG third, C9 fourth, Dig fifth, TSM sixth, Immortal seventh, COG eighth, FlyQuest ninth, and Golden Guardians 10th. And I know you did power rankings of your own, but the purpose of this episode is we're kind of going to go team by team and list how, like, the ceiling of a team and why, like, how they can reach their ceiling, but then also the floor of the team and how that is going to vary for various teams and how they get there. So do you want to start from the bottom or from the top?
I think it's probably more entertaining actually to do this one from the top because I think a lot of the high variance teams actually might be below like fourth.
Okay. So we haven't revealed the variance levels to each other. So I imagine you have TL first on your power rankings as well.
Yep, I've done my power rankings. They're a little bit different from yours, yeah.
I think it's actually hard to find a person that didn't put TL first in their power rankings after they won lock-in without Core JJ. Mm-hmm. Like, it's you could still predict it. Like, I don't think they're a lock to win, but I just feel like people are going to be doing the prediction for TL first. But what's your floor for TL? What's the worst that can happen?
Okay, so in my opinion, if TL keep Ayla and they have, maybe a bit more of an inconsistent split,
so
they
Core
could finish.
Doesn't get his green card or something.
Correct.
Has to leave.
Something goes wrong.
Yeah.
No inside information here, but like if that was the floor of this team, I would say that they could finish third.
Oh, so I had as my list of things that could go wrong. Interestingly enough, like, almost none of these were gameplay related, which maybe is a bit of a cop-out. It was Core JJ gets deported, Bjergsen is washed, and Santorin health issues return. And if all of those things happened, I have them at fourth, which is still pretty good.
That's still a pretty good team. So you've got three substitutes on the team with Hans and Bwipo, and they're still fourth place.
Yeah, and I already talked a fair bit about TL in my power rankings of like what can go well because I have them first, but I feel like Core JJ and Bwipo together have the potential to create something really, really special. Then there'll be Bjergsen and Santorin as like reliable setup through the middle of the map, and then Hans Sama can just be kind of a god in team fights. And we actually saw it kind of already during lock-in without Core, what the team can potentially look like.
I also think like upside for this team is they're probably one of the most patch resilient team I've ever seen. Every single player can play carry or support on the team. Santorin's a really great carry player. He also plays a lot of the junglers that take low econ. We've already seen Bwipo play tanks, and then we've seen him play hard carries. Hans is surprisingly good in that position as well, which shocked me. And obviously Bjerg has made like his whole name off being one of the best aggressive mid laners and also being a very, very good supportive mid laner. So I think that something that's flying under the radar for this team is, Kobe on the dive was talking about, okay, this team has got the bottom play style down pat when Core comes back. It's like, but they don't have to. If the meta changes for whatever reasons, revert the teleport changes, I still think they'll be fine.
Do you agree that bot lane is now, like, relatively speaking, more important than other lanes because of the teleport changes? Or do you think it's possible that mid or top could still be like more abused if you have the right matchup?
So it depends how you look at it, because what CLG Academy has been doing a lot nowadays is they just don't run teleports in any lane. They run exhaust tops and ignite mids a lot. Yeah. And it gives them a lot of power to be able to actually take over laning phase. And then when they group, they have like 2 extra combat summoner spells from you, and you can play side lanes. But at the end of the day, if they stack dragons early or something like this, then eventually you got to fight them. So I do think that the way the game is currently being played at the highest level, it does support that bottom lane focus. But what I would say is if you have great solo lanes, you don't have to play that way. There are ways you can currently break the meta. And what you will always see in North America, because this is the way the system operates, is that the academy teams have to do it first and prove that it's viable, and then maybe it'll bleed through into the LCS.
Yeah. I noticed the CLG thing as well. They're actually currently first place in academy.
Yeah, they're nearly undefeated. They're playing really, really well. Yeah. And that's without their coach in North America. Juves is currently in Australia, and without their starting mid lane at Triple. So they've been playing games in scrims with RJS. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying this. And then they've been playing on stage with both DeMonte and Palafox. So this is definitely not the ceiling of that team either.
Yeah, that'll be a really good thing to track. On to, I think we basically covered TL for ceiling and floor. I'm going to talk about 100 Thieves next because they were second on my power rankings. Where were they on yours?
Second.
Oh, really? Second place?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. I have actually, they are second in my power rankings, but my ceiling is 1 and their floor is 4. How about you?
Yeah, I've got the exact same thing. Ceiling 1, floor 4.
See, this is why I need different guests on the podcast. We can't just
we didn't
have
even
the
compare
same
notes.
opinion. Yeah, I think they're number 1. This is maybe overly basic, but they, I think, can win if they do what they did in 2021 summer from a playstyle perspective, where they're very committed towards FBI and Huhi and playing the game through FBI, and then kind of allowing the other lanes to just be strong with good team fighting. A strong bot lane with a strong jungler, I think, is going to be even more powerful than it was last split. But I think they will struggle if they try and do it all. And I've already seen this a little bit in just the interviews talking about the team. It was either Closer or Abadage was like, no, actually, we can play through any lane. We can have a carry top. We can have a carry mid. We can be super flexible. This would be very annoying for them to hear, I'm sure, but like, I just think they should stick to what works. And if they try and get too creative, they're probably going to struggle.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a lot in the past, but like in traditional sports, it's much more accepted to say like, oh, we are the defensive team, and then to buy into that system and then to go out there and try and win a game defensively. Versus in League of Legends, for some reasons, it's like frowned upon to say, you know, we're a bottom-centric team and this is how we play good League of Legends. It's like, what? How is that possible? But I kind of agree. The reason I have their ceiling so high is I think on their good days, Abadage, FBI, and Closer are the best jungler, best mid, and best AD carry. And all you need for them to be in form at the same time, and it's great. But I think that their floor is 4th because I think what will happen is if they start struggling with the 6-man roster, they will deny Tenacity minutes and it will undo probably a lot of work that they're currently focusing on in scrims, and will just undo a lot of the time that they spent prepping. And that obviously they have a very talented lineup, so they shouldn't become, you know, less than 4, but I think that is definitely a possibility.
Yeah. How many teams do you have at 1 for a ceiling?
Four-ish? Four. I'll say 4. Yeah.
I also have 4. What the? Okay. My third.
Okay, then I'll change one.
Okay, you'll change one just to be spicy.
Yeah, exactly.
Next team is EG. I have ceiling 1, which I think before the lock-in finals, you would have found like 80% of the internet would also say that they were just going to be the best. And their floor is 5 for me. So I'll let you go first with your floor and then your reasons.
Damn, we would have had the exact same thing if this was not the one I changed. So I'm going to say their ceiling is 2 because I changed it.
So you think only 3 teams can win?
Yeah, and their floor is 5. I don't think, like, if I had to remove a team that could win, like, I would remove this team because I currently had 4, which, like, you know, I agree saying 4 out of 10 teams can win. That's a bit of a cop-out. So I'll say 3 out of 10 teams can win. This team can't win. Why can this team not win? Okay, at a floor, Danny and Vulcan stops working for whatever reason, and they become dysfunctional as a bottom lane. And we saw Danny at times last year had exploitable laning phases, and Jojo gets focused because this is how you played against them in Academy. And you just put a whole bunch of resources into the lane that is laning into Jojo, and he will straight run it down mid. And if that happens consistently and his confidence gets shattered, because it's very hard to break an Academy player's confidence, but you can do that in the LCS. We've both seen it happen before. Then this team could definitely come 5th.
Yeah, I don't have much to add on that. You actually added more detail into Inspired has a hard time working with Jojo, which would have been like my second point. But that can just happen if teams are hard focusing him and he's not giving respect. it could, and Inspire just doesn't want to be a, I guess, scripted jungler that has to just be there for 2v2s. It could create tension.
Absolutely. And I think that, I mean, you look at the games that they were incredibly successful on in Academy. There was a lot of contracts playing Nidalee, a lot of Jojo playing Renekton or a melee mid laner, and it was like straight up going through mid first. That's not to say that's the only way you can play. He also had some good LeBlanc games as well, where he was by himself and playing very solo. But I do think that there was a pre-described way to play against EG Academy, who were much less dangerous in the other roles. But that was how you beat them.
Yep. And the way they win, for me, you have them at second. I actually have, I think a lot of other people would have like JoJo is the MVP because he's the guy with all the hype. I would say like they'll win if Inspired wins LCS MVP, the guy like who's won MVP before in LEC. So that, and then also on top of that, Danny and JoJo would just be consistently strong, consistent laners. I say consistent twice, but basically just really good in laning phase and let Inspired run the show.
I would agree with that. I would say like the way this team would come second for me is if the rookies bought into the system that Inspired wanted to play and they actually utilize Impact in a way that he maybe hasn't been utilized a little bit lately because he is starting to show once again some lane dominance. And I think that can be played around. And once again, this team has an amazing support. I'm a huge fan of Vulcan. I actually think he is like nearly underrated, which is such a strange thing to say for a player that many would consider like top 3 in his role. And I think that Inspired is a very talented jungler.
Yeah. I have C9 fourth in my power rankings, and this is, I believe, well, them and Dignitas are the two biggest spreads. I think their ceiling is 1. I think their floor, I played around with this number a bit. I think their floor is like 7.
Okay.
What about you?
I have their ceiling as 1, and their floor is 10th.
Okay, you go first. Tell me their floor. Tell me their floor.
Okay, so they are experimenting with a 10-man roster, and they need to ensure that their players are not precious about ego. Now, they've all come out and said that they're not precious about ego, that they're buying into this system. But as soon as like 3 or 4 players are getting precious about ego, and then the community, like, because LS is like a big magnifying glass to me. So what happens is like there's community opinion, which is already brutal, as we know, and then you throw it through the LS magnifying glass. And if there's any issues there, I think it's going to start cracking. And what I will say is, even though I think they are an incredibly talented team, they are also a very young team in some roles. And pressure, bad season, and very, very famous org coach and expectations. I've just seen the perfect storm happen too many times with Super Team. And I think that it could completely disintegrate and fall apart. Now, I don't think it is going to happen because I actually have a lot more faith in LS than I think some other people do. I've always had good interaction with LS. I think he's going to be a very good coach. But if it does happen in the perfect storm, I could see this being a complete bottom out. They will be the LA Lakers, who are currently missing playoffs.
They're the anti-Lakers because the Lakers are too old. But Cloud9, I was curious, so I went on Leaguepedia and checked everyone's ages. Cloud9 is actually the youngest team in the LCS by projected starters.
Yeah.
Part of that is because Berserker is so young, right? Their bottom lane is just so incredibly young. Fudge is still also very young.
And he's 19 or something, isn't he?
He's 19. Yeah, he was Worlds, like he just turned 17 and then he went to Worlds.
He beat me when he was 17 to make Worlds,
with Mammoth. The famous Aatrox clip that you've rewatched many times. If anyone would like to see it, look up Order versus Mammoth, OPL split 2 playoffs 2019, I think.
Yep, that'll find it for you, I think.
Yep, Aatrox Yuumi when Yuumi was broken, and Aatrox had a bunch of self-healing. It wasn't pretty, but that's because you put them 10th. That's Fudge's revenge. But I'll echo the things you said about, like, I don't really have much to add on the things that could go wrong. But I do want to emphasize how even if like some of the players are good at insulating from public pressure, all of the players will not be good at ignoring public pressure. So any type of negativity, any type of Yahoo content creators that decide to stir up drama with them, any like bait that gets taken, like all of that I think eventually will detract for the team unless they can use it as like billboard material, like you would see a football team use in a sports show. But like that can actually be real if you get galvanizing moment for the team to like F the haters, we're going to do it our way, which sounds like the way that they want to play. And I guess the number one is if, and like, I think they could actually win even without all of these things being true, but it's if the vision that LS and Max Waldo and Fudge and the culture that they've created is just correct, because it is somewhat of a contrarian vision of how to play League of Legends. And we can't go into detail on exactly what that is because they also haven't gone into the level of detail that would allow us to make this definition. But roughly, it definitely feels like different champion picks, different approach to rune pages, a much more systematic way of playing pretty much League of Legends, minimizing risk, trying to maximize small gold leads. If they can actually perfect that style and have like high mechanic players, it would be a really amazing season and story for them.
Not even necessarily, like, obviously that's a way that they win, but like the other way they win is that Fudge has a similar trajectory to what he had this year. They shore up the support issues that I think that, we saw Isles. He is a player that is very good on his picks and then can be exploited off those picks. I haven't really seen all that much of Winsome, but if Fudge levels up the way he did in top lane, if Winsome is serviceable, then you look at the other three roles and they should be amazing players. You have Summit, Berserker, Blabber. Like, that's a very good core to a team. Like, why can they win? Because their core of players
is really good.
Pretty amazing. So like, that's what you need. And then you just need like a little bit of the other stuff, coaching and stuff, to make a big difference. And then you've probably got a winning formula.
It's true. They also have a 2-time LCS MVP in the jungle with Blabber. So even if, I should correct the other statement. Even if they don't play a contrarian style of League of Legends and they just tried to emulate the way Blabber played in 2019 with like Niski, Licorice, Sven, Vulcan, if Berserker's actually just cracked, Fudge has a trajectory and Summit is lane dominant, they still have Blabber, and you could just run the game and they could win. So, a lot of upside for that team.
I'm really excited. I would say, like, with an asterisk, obviously I've got a TL hoodie on, but like, if I was just a fan passively watching the season, I would be most interested to tune into every Cloud9 game, and for a positive reason. I actually want this team to do well because I think that they've taken a big chance. I really respect the shot that they've taken, and I actually like the roster they've put together on paper. So like, I want them to do well.
I have kind of a broken analogy for this, and I also don't know which way the analogy falls, but the conversations around LS, or possibly the conversations that are going to be happening around Cloud9, remind me of when the Phoenix Suns were really good, back when they kept getting knocked out of the playoffs by the Spurs. 7 seconds or less era Suns, where they just shot threes all the time, because you had so many people like Phil Jackson or big time sports commentators that were saying stuff like, you won't ever be able to win an NBA title shooting that many threes. Playoffs is all about like half court basketball and like reliable scoring when the defense is really locked down. And then because they lost, they traded for Shaq and like ruined their dynasty. And then eventually a couple years later, the Golden State Warriors and, the Houston Rockets happened, and the NBA is where it is today. But weirdly, like, they had the formula, people were contrarian against it, and it was actually a different team in the future that had to prove the formula because, and even Steve Nash has talked about this, there was like this glass ceiling that they could only go so crazy with their strategy, even though the optimal version of that strategy was actually even crazier than what they were doing at the time. The broken part of this analogy, though, and hopefully I haven't lost people, because basically the just like this oversimplified version of the reason the Phoenix Suns and Golden State Warriors and Houston Rockets and the NBA is shooting all the threes is because 3 points is more than 2 points. And even though it is like a higher risk play, it ultimately leads to more reward in the aggregate. The danger here is, what if the current way of playing League is shooting 3-pointers and Cloud9 just wants to take baseline twos all the time? What if it's that? That's what I haven't decided yet. But I think I just have to see.
I can see the analogy play out, because like the reality is, like, what happens if it's just a baseline twos? Well, then you just hope that one of the players is LeBron James and the other one's Anthony Davis, and you still wouldn't play basketball like that like 2 years ago. So like, I don't think the analogy is broken, but I do agree with you. Like, they will try and morph the way that the game is played, at least in the short term. And I think that's good. That's exciting.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah. Most exciting team in the LCS. Whenever I say that in story meetings, it gets called the cold take, but I'm going to say it again. because they are the most interesting and exciting team in the LCS. Next team I want to cover is Dig, because I probably overrated them in my power rankings. I have them as a playoff team. I actually have them as 5th. I flame people for like overreacting to like 100 Thieves and Immortals from Lock-In, but then I just like do my own overreaction and put Dig 5th because they had like a good week in Lock-In. But I also have their floor at 10. So they're insanely variant. And I don't think the floor at 10 is actually that crazy because they were literally the last pick in Lock-In when half the teams were fielding full academy rosters and they were only missing River. Like the LCS teams thought that they were the worst team in the league. So I think that world is still possible where they just revert to the mean, and River had like some good instincts in jungle pathing, but eventually he's either going to get tilted or like I actually think he's super good, so I don't feel like he's going to like get figured out.
Because everyone's like, yeah, River had a good week. It's like, no, River's had a good 3 years. You just never watched the region that he played in.
Yeah,
so,
he's been a dominant PC. I don't know how Dig got this guy, actually. I'd love to.
No, I think it's pretty cool.
I'd love to hear the story about River.
I have their floor at 7. I don't think that they can come last. And like, I think that a couple of reasons. I think River is genuinely good. We had a category when I was in the OPL where we used to call players like not that bad. And it's not an insult, I swear, when I say you're not that bad. But like Neo and Bifrost are not that bad. They're like completely serviceable players. And then Blue also looked good. Like he didn't look not that bad. Like he was a pleasant surprise. And Fake God is just a rock in the top. Like, I mean, I don't have many positive things to say about the guy. I think he is exploitable. But from everything I've seen, he has great mental and he can hold on real tight. So hopefully, I don't think this team can finish below 7.
I feel like your word choice of rock was interesting there, because you could say like Impact is a rock in top lane. Yeah. Like he's reliable and immovable, but you're swimming and you're holding a rock. Like was that your Fake God analogy?
No, I don't think he's that bad, but like what I will say is like he has a very limited effective champion pool. And even on those picks, I don't think he necessarily wins lane. So like what I think he is like, to me, he would be like a gatekeeper is like what I would say, like probably too good for academy. Probably not good enough to be like mid-tier in LCS. And they are probably going to need to factor that into their decision making when they decide what kind of League of Legends they want to play.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think Fake God definitely had some moments in spring where he was very effective of last year, but based off of Lock-In tournament, he looked like the swimming kind of rock and not the like solid one. So he needs to revert to the spring split version of 2021.
Potentially.
Yeah. You want to talk about TSM?
Yeah, TSM. That's a big one to me. This team is like also like incredibly high variance.
How big's your spread? Because you've done a 110, so you've already capped out.
Yeah.
But what are you on?
So TSM? I've got like 2 to 7 on this team.
That's exactly what I have.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had them at 1 for a while, and then I thought about it, and I'm like, I can't just say like 5 teams could win. They are the closest 2 to 1 that I have, and I don't think it's because they're going to win a lot of regular season games. I just think that there is a chance in 2.5 months with a double elimination playoff bracket that they like find their form in some way, because I mean, I worked with...
does that as well, by the way. For people that are doubting that, like TSM always somehow just shows up in like playoffs randomly and like has like really good runs. And it's tough to stop them. Like the reason I have 2 to 7 is because like, okay, so like negatives, language barrier, right?
Huge.
Really tough to overcome.
Yeah.
Different culture. It's typically more difficult, I would say, from like what my experience is to bring Chinese players into Western culture. And I don't think it has had as much success. I think that's a fair statement to make. And then I think that the amount of background noise around TSM with everyone moving, you know, Path is out, Bjerg is out, like the articles that are being written, just in the same way that C9 have like that big LS magnifying glass. Yeah. When you play for TSM, you just have the TSM magnifying glass. Like what other teams can say, you can come over, turn on your stream and start yelling memes and we'll get you like 3, 4, 5, 10,000 viewers like instantly.
It still works. Yeah. And
like,
and the clips still make it to Reddit and they get power upvoted and they're just...
Yes. and just a brand that this team has of the
Still.
Zuma brand that could go one of two ways. So I think that this could also be a spectacular failure. But if, like, kind of what you're saying, if they like do the hard work, kind of struggle, figure it out, because I think what this team wants to do is get Western players playing an Eastern brand of League of Legends and really play that lane dominant in your face style, and unleash Speaker for maybe the first time, like fully, like get him some winning lanes, allow him to play through that. That could be like a Blabberess split where, you know, he's just double crabbing everyone and just flying around the rift on Nidalee and looking insane. But that's why I think they can come second. But I don't think that they have the necessary star power and structure right now to be able to get a first.
Yeah, I wanted to go in a little bit more on the Zoomer angle. Like, you and I have experienced this a little bit because, like, we both worked with Tactical and you work with Jan. Like, there actually is this, like, big energy difference between what is currently now, like, 20, 21 years and under in the LCS versus, I don't want to overgeneralize, but this is kind of just a lot of the under 21s have this, like, Zoomer energy, where they're going to have you walk in at D's Nuts jokes like 5 times a day and just laugh their asses off at it. But they're also just going to scream at each other all the time. Like, they're so hot and cold with energy all the time. And that, like, could potentially be a problem for a team, but they just combined them all together. Like, they have 4 Zoomers on that team, pretty much. And then Huni in the top lane, who I imagine can just chill with anything. And, like, the energy level of that team is crazy. And I think it could also lead to just some massive inconsistency even week to week. So there could be a week where they look like world beaters, and then maybe they just have a bad week and they'll fall apart on stage. It'll be a ride. I'm more excited for the TSM roster than I guess others, although I'm not. You sounded pretty excited about it just now, more so because it is just a hard pivot from what they had been doing. And it's a pivot we haven't seen before in the LCS with the 2 Chinese imports.
So we don't have the North American bias that other people would have of EG, but I feel like TSM is like my EG. Like, everyone's so hyped about EG, like Danny, Jojo, you know, we got a great jungler and Inspired, like North America talent, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, obviously I don't have the North American homerism, but I'm like, wow, TSM have like this Zoomer energy that people are saying EG have. And like, obviously I have a good relationship with Eddie. He's actually just a great guy. So like, they're kind of like my Zoomer energy team that, like, I just hope they like pop off and do like what I think a lot of people hope that EG do. And it's just so funny that like people are saying, oh, TSM import team, like EG like domestic team. But it's like, well, you know, Speaker and Tactical probably should get some credit for being local players, guys, but maybe not.
Local high mechanic talent.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I while we're on the topic, before we move on to the next team, I think Tactical was one of the most unfairly treated players by social media for like a year. Based on his performance versus the way people talked about him. Anything he ever did good, people thought it was because of Core JJ, and then anything that he did bad was only because of him and also blown out of proportion. So I just think the level of the way people look at him is off, and it'll be cool seeing him in a new environment.
Also, people just aren't fair in their criticism. Like, if we want to go into it, like, criticism is just not consistent at all. This guy is always like top 3 in solo queue. You send him on a Korean boot camp, he immediately shoots into Challenger. You send him to Europe, he immediately shoots into Challenger. And then people like put like his individual play under the microscope a lot. And like, he does have some decision-making things sometimes going on. Like, his risk assessment, I would say, is like sometimes miscalibrated. So I'm not saying he's a perfect player, but much like you, I think that this guy has like way more upside than he does downside. Like, he is a genuine talent, and he is still so young.
He also, I checked this yesterday, played as many splits with Core JJ as Doublelift. You wouldn't have think that they were both partners for the same amount of time. I have Immortals next. I had them 7th in my power rankings. Where'd you put them?
Okay. I had him 9th in my power rankings.
Okay. A lot of people put him 10th. A lot of people. I have their floor as 10th. But I have their ceiling. I typed it as 3, but I don't want to say it. I'm going to say 4. I'm going to say their ceiling is 4.
That's a high ceiling.
It's a high ceiling because I think it's not just like the performance of the team. It's also if a couple of other teams blow up. Like we already said, Cloud9, super high variance. right? We said EG could possibly I have EG being able to fall all the way until 5th. We said TSM could fall all the way until 7th. Like, if all those things happen, I could see Immortals taking this, because I know Xerxes was like a super good jungler last year. I think PoE is a significant upgrade in the mid lane. And then I think Wild Turtle and Destiny, while they did not play well at all in lock-in, really none of this team did, but like Wild Turtle has, the last time he was on a team with PoE was actually super successful. So I think, like, I really
I've
do
heard
think
this so many times. 2/5 of the FlyQuest team that really pull everyone's blood.
Well, it's just, why do you think they'll be 9th, I guess?
Okay, so like people are saying PoE has been able to carry teams to playoff performances before by like just give every piece of resource to PoE.
Yeah.
I heard on the dive, like I've heard like nearly everyone say this, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that the game is changing more to a global kind of play style. Like, you know, you talk about how Golden State Warriors kind of changed that formula, and like I think it was Doinby for like mid laners on a global level, and slowly but surely people are getting better at playing that way, and I don't think it's good enough to just be able to sit scale and farm, and I think that that's how you beat bad teams in North America, and I don't think the standard of teams is that poor that they're going to allow you to do that. I'm also much lower on Wild Turtle, Destiny, Revenge, and Xerxes than I think a lot of people. Maybe a cold take, but I think that they are, you know, tailing out some of these players, and I think that the rate of improvement that I would want to see just hasn't been there. And I think that there is vast inconsistency even in Xerxes' game, who a lot of people are pretty hype on. And jungle seems like a very competitive role. So I think that inconsistent junglers could get smacked around by a lot of teams this year. So I'm not certain about the stability of this team.
Yeah, I think everything you're saying is fair, and then also the fact that they haven't won a game yet, even in lock-in, speaks to that. And then to speak more to what their floor could look like, this team reminds a lot of people of 2021 CLG, where it was the collection of decent players from the past brought together onto a new team, and the chemistry just flopped. That would be the fear with this team, honestly.
The thing about like the 100 Thieves is like they can play through bottom lane even if top is unstable. Like, you know, the Cloud9 were like, well, at least they got someone in the top lane. He's going to draw a lot of pressure. It's like, okay, so everyone's failing around him. How does PoE generate you a lead? It's like, okay, well, you hope you have a jungler like Santorin that is going to be able to like lock down vision for this guy to get 200 CS in 20 minutes and hope that the third dragon is like around about that time. Like that's your game plan? Like, that sounds rough to me.
Did win a lot of games 2 years ago. It sounds rough, but it won a lot of games.
Eddie Troas.
Yeah.
It did win a lot of games.
Beat TL in playoffs. CLG, let's talk about them. There was like a large sense of optimism around this org from where they were last year, where they were 10th place in Academy, 10th place in LCS. Now, 3 weeks into the Academy season, they're, as we mentioned at the top, temporarily first. They won a few games in lock-in, generated a little bit of excitement, lost 1-2 to Cloud9. I still put them, like, all things like on the table, my 8, 9, 10 Empower rankings, which is Fly, COG, Golden Guardians, I have them all with the same ceiling and floor. Like, it's ridiculous. It's 6 ceiling, 10 floor. Very few things separate these people. And I actually have, I'm going to put you on the spot for this because I think it's an interesting conversation. We have an 8-team game split. We've seen a 17-1 Immortals back in 2015. We've also had splits like last year where the number one team had like a 65% win rate. Where do you think the separation is going to be this year? Like, what's the record of the first place team and what's the record of the 10th place team? Is it compressed or is it far away?
Compressed to me. Just for multiple reasons. One reason, I think that onus on playing multiple styles means top teams now drop games as they try and diversify, because what they do is they go, okay, maybe we're a bad Twisted Fate team, but we're playing Immortals tomorrow, so let's bust out the Twisted Fate. And then turns out Immortals is good enough to penalty pick you're not that good on. So I think that variance is now there in League of Legends. And also, like Andre said it, Gilioto, I also just think that the league is not that, like, even the bad players are not that bad. So like I think it's just a sandwich league at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to say top record is 13-5.
Okay. I would probably go, somewhere around that.
Yeah. And that's like, usually it's 14-4, 15-3, something like that. Like one team really pops off, but I have 13-5. And then bottom tier, just because like if I look at it like a team like COG or even Golden Guardian, so I have in 10th, we'll get into the detail of COG after this because I kind of skipped over them in my previous video as well. But like I can still see them beating a TSM or a C9 or hell, like it's best of ones are so crazy. Like you can literally 10th can be
5 or
first.
6 games.
Yeah, it can always happen. But okay, let's talk about best situation for COG. What was your ceiling and floor for them, by the way?
They're ceiling at 6th and their floor at 10th.
All right, same as me. What's their ceiling?
So their ceiling is Luga is actually really good. Palafox is pretty good. And then I think their role players in Jenkins, Contracts, and Poom are like good players. And Jenkins is my boy. He is going to have to lean, like, I think that I coached Jenkins for a while. And I was like, man, you got to learn how to play Renekton. Like, you got to learn how to do this stuff. And then, like, I'll tell you a story about it, like, to just kind of put it in context. Like, I just hammered him one day after scrims, like, man, like, we're giving up Renekton as doing all this work. We don't have a great counter pick into it. We're playing a lot of Volibear and Kled. Like, we got to learn how to play Renekton. And then he went back to scrims that night, and he was playing Anivia top with Albert in Discord. And I was like, what is going on? And he's like, Anivia is pretty much AP Renekton. Like, it does all the things that you want Renekton to do. And I was like, okay, like, I very clearly can't make this guy play, like, strictly meta. And I've got to start using his champion pool. And then we had 100% win rate on like Kennen because we would just play like Nocturne Kennen comps. We would play like Kled against you guys in scrims and like, you know, take it to Alfari and the Renekton match.
Like a 60% win rate against TLLCS.
Volibear is very good. And then he would play things like Lilia top. His gangplank was very clean. So like I think like as a coach, you got to get used to Jenkins a little bit. And I trust the CLG coaching staff too. So like if everything goes well, they like figure out his weak side pool and a couple of aggressive picks, and then Luga plays like really well. I think they could be like a 6th place team. But unfortunately, I see this roster as like if I am CLG, what I'm doing is I've brought in all these rookies, and I'm just looking for that one or two, like that FBI closer like dynamic. And then like I'm going to make some tweaks and I'm going to be very liberal with my experimentation. And this is like a 2-year project where it's like, okay, you know, we've got Luga, like he's our franchise player. You know, okay, Palafox is working out a little bit. Okay, like who do I actually like experiment with? Like if I can attract a good support over, like, you know, if a Vulcan scenario happens to not Vulcan, where like all of a sudden one of the better supports is out there, like you snag him, you put him with Luga. Okay, now you've got a solid bottom core. Like who are we looking as imports at the top side of the map? That's how I would treat the CLG roster. And that's why I don't think their ceiling is incredibly high, because I think that largely some of these players probably won't be where they want them to be.
Because we're just talking about the spring split as well. And maybe they have someone pop off in their academy system. That's always the dream of an org versus trying to sign someone in free agency. But I pretty much agree with everything you said. I think the 10 scenario happens if, like, Palafox had an off year last year. He was the hyped player coming from C9 Academy 2 years ago. Frankly, I was a little surprised that he got the LCS starting spot again when you have players like Jensen and Jizuke who are not playing at all. I know everyone was using like blue as the analogy for this, but I was a little surprised with Palafox. That's not to say that he can't pull something off. He's a great solo queue player, right? I am also way more sympathetic to players being in bad environments versus it being a bad player. I think that's way more common than people think, so it's possible that just wasn't a good situation for him last year on FlyQuest. But if that doesn't go well, if the Jenkins champion pool issues end up being good, and then if Poom Luger can't sync together, like this team would just have no win conditions and just fall into 10th, which is possible, but I don't think super likely.
Will say about Poom Luga is like I feel like the data that's coming out from a lot of experts is getting like really distorted. This team didn't, to my knowledge, win either regular season split. I think it was like Cloud9 won regular season split 1, we won Northern Arena, then like we beat them in split 2 playoffs as well. It wasn't until like all the substitutes came through that they actually won something at the end of the year. This bottom lane did not run over Academy. Like they were a very, very good bottom lane in Academy, but it's not like they were just like blasting everyone. And I think it's kind of unfair to the like how much better they've got over the offseason to be like, like when you watched them in Academy, you knew they were going to be a top 3 bottom lane in LCS. It's like, no, you didn't. Like Ayla and Yon were completely fine against them. There were some team games where they ran over us. There were some games where we got the better of them. And like King and Isles were a good bottom lane in Academy. Prismal's always a good player in Academy. So I do think it's fairly disingenuous analysis to be like, we knew this was going to happen. Because like, I didn't know it was going to happen. And we scribbed against them like 100 times.
I think I actually really like that you're bringing up Academy players, because hopefully like the type of people who are listening to this podcast are also interested in like NA Academy. You just played NA Academy. You can watch Academy on Twitch TV/Academy, or it's streamed elsewhere like your game was today on a different Twitch channel.
On twitch.tv/FaceItTV.
Yeah. If you're interested in it, it's actually like last year, I was of the opinion that 4 or 5 of the Academy teams could compete or be better than the bottom 4 or 5 teams in the LCS. I think last year the LCS was very top heavy. It's less top heavy this year, and you would know better than me the Academy strength this year. I was just way more plugged into it last year. But yeah, I thought Luger, before he even came to NA, had the potential to be a very good player. Like LCS level, maybe best case he turns into a player like FBI. Obviously not there yet, but that was kind of the ceiling I saw for him. But echo that it's not like the duo was stomping people and proving that to be true already. It still has a ways to go. Golden Guardians.
Nice.
I felt bad. I felt bad putting them 10th. Who was 10th in your power rankings? Give me like your
FlyQuest.
7, 8, 9, 10.
So I had Golden Guardians 7th, CLG 8th, Immortals 9th, FlyQuest 10th.
Okay.
I think we have very different opinions on Golden Guardians as well.
Okay. Then I feel like... So my opinion on Golden Guardians was I was putting them 10th. This is a stupid opinion. I was putting them 10th, but I don't think they'll finish 10th. Because like they just never finish 10th. But I just, on paper, it looks like they could or should. But then they'll finish like 7th. Like just above the line for if you finish below this in 5 out of 8 splits, you're eligible for move from the LCS. They always end higher than that line.
So give me your reasoning, because I had this team between 4th and 8th. So like I want to hear why like you think that they're the 10th place team.
I put them 10th because I can't pick a 10th place team.
Okay, so how do they finish 10th? Everyone's just better than them and they're average?
Kind of, yeah. That's like the simplest way. They're also not young at all. Not that I think age is a little overrated, but they're like the second oldest team in the LCS. Ole might really just not work in his competitive comeback. It's been a very long time away from the LCS for him. Licorice has been super hot and cold. He had that resurgence on Golden Guardians last year for like a month or two, but before that it was like a year of below average LCS play. I think Pride can be good. I've heard actually good things about them in scrims. And then I think Blazolve was probably their best player last split and super underrated, and might be their best player this split as well. But that combination with, like, we've talked about very real upsides for all the other teams. I can see those upsides being higher than the Golden Guardians. That's why I had them 10th.
That makes sense. Like, so obviously I have like more insight, I think, into Golden Guardians than probably a lot of people, because the way that they construct their teams is that an arrow just looks at whoever was on my teams previously and then employs them as coaches.
Is that a quote from him, or is that just...
I think so. I think that's what he said once he took Choo Choo's, Spooks, Swiper, and everyone else. But so... no, that's obviously in jest. So, like, obviously, like, Spooks and Swiper in particular, I know pretty well. Spooks got me into competitive League of Legends in 2014, pretty much. So, like, he's one of my good friends. I think that this is the group of players that, like, you talk about, like, us and them mentalities when you talk about, like, galvanizing a group of players. And I think this is the easiest group of players to do it for. It's like Licorice, a Blaze Olive, Lost. You are like the players that should have been good in North America and weren't, and now we're giving you this chance. Like, Jad is putting you 10th in the power rankings. I mean, yeah. We are going to fly under every radar, and we are going to push and be a good team. And their core was already pretty solid last year, and I think Lost and Ole is a strict upgrade over Stixxay and Chime, I want to say, was their support player last year. So, like, they only got better in that role.
They had
Pride Stalker.
They had Newbie for a while, and then they switched, I believe.
Yeah, and Pride Stalker is significantly better than Iconic, in my opinion. So, like, all they did is make upgrades. And, like, I think that they made upgrades at a rate that is higher than the LCS getting better. So, like, I actually have, like, if some of the pieces fall into place where the top teams, hit the bottom of what we're saying, I think this team could like shoot up into playoff contention. And I also have a lot more faith in the Golden Guardians coaching staff of doing it because they have done it before. They did it with the Golden Guardians lineup, a couple of years ago.
They almost won an LCS split. Basically.
And to me, the difference between this team and a lot of the other teams that I have in the bottom four is their coaching staff is proven. And maybe that doesn't matter to, Bob23 on Reddit, but to other coaches, like that actually makes an impact. And I think that they have a criminally underrated coaching staff. The fact that nepotism gets thrown around for this coaching staff, in my opinion, is disgusting and shows no one looks at the pedigree of people that are actually coaching the team. Because every single one of their positional coaches is currently challenger and currently can play at a very high level that they can even play scrims. So like they are very, very good people to be informing these gentlemen how to play League of Legends.
What's your peak for him again? 4?
4th.
I like it.
They could make a semifinal.
I like it.
Which would be insane for this roster.
Yeah. If I had to do this again, I would put a different team 10th.
Hell yeah, I've convinced chat.
That's all I wanted to do. Move them to 9 in my edge again. I would have... This is why I put them 10th, because I would say because every other team that I'd put 10th, and I'm just rehashing the Power Rankings video. Apologies. I swear we're talking about ceilings and floors. I said I had the opinion that bottom lane is going to be an extremely important thing in the LCS this year, more important than the other solo lanes. And I think Luger is an awesome player. So I'm like, well, I can't put COG 10th. FlyQuest, who you have 10th, would be a better argument. I have them as 8th, but I think Jose Diodo is still a very strong player. I think Chikoi is a very good control mage player. And then I think if they ever get a lead, Aframu's still going to be strong enough to kind of guide the team to victory. So like every team I can make this like positive case for.
So just a very positive person. I'm just a negative Nancy. So that's why it's easier for me to do the flaws of these players.
I know.
Are we up to FlyQuest? Who are we doing next?
I actually skipped them by accident, so they're the last team. Give me your ceiling and floor.
7th.
Okay. I was 6-10, so we're very close.
Yeah, floor 10th. I think that Kumo was a fine academy top laner, not a good academy top laner. I think that he is the fish out of water on this lineup. I think Johnson and Afro is very solid, but I don't think that they are like the pop-off crazy takeover games. And then I think you brought it up or that Dive brought it up. Someone brought it up. It was like Jose Diodo is cashing a paycheck for a World's 2020 performance. And I'm not quite that extreme. Like he's obviously a very skilled
I didn't say that.
player.
That was one of those Yahoos. No.
Yeah, no, it was off Reddit, but someone repeated the Reddit phrase. But I think that he did not impress me last year. So I'm hoping he impresses me this year, but I am lukewarm to cold on this lineup. This lineup doesn't have the upside of other lineups for me.
Yeah. That's it. What's the worst record? What's the worst record in the LCS?
I could see a world where FlyQuest go like 3-15.
Okay. I was going to say 4-14, and that's if a lot of things go wrong. Keeping in mind, spring of 2021, the like really, really bad Golden Guardians before they made any improvements was 3-15.
Maybe they'll win a 4th game because they're not that bad. It has gotten better. Maybe it's even 5 games. And that's what I said. A lot of these teams, I feel like, could snag 5 games.
Yeah, this could definitely be one of those splits where we're like 5 weeks in and we're like, 2 games separate 1st and 10th. What's happening? And hopefully people don't say it's
splits where like you just have like 1 or 2 teams at the very, very top. If like TL and like an EG or 100 Thieves gets their gear together, and then like you could have like 5 people last.
Yeah.
Like, just all on equal records.
Yeah. And then my hope is if that happens, the conversation isn't how it's a clown fiesta, because there are positives for kind of all these teams this year.
You're on the broadcast, man. Don't make it a clown
I'm on the
fiesta.
broadcast like 1 day a week. I can do my best.
Do some better storytelling, Jack.
Yeah,
do some better storytelling.
That's what this podcast is for. It's gonna be huge. I gained like 600 subscribers from the first episode.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So if you made it
Smash
this
the
point,
bell.
smash the subscribe button. Remember to like and leave a comment, and we'll do the whole YouTube thing. Or if you watch it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Any shout outs you want to make before I wrap up?
No, shout out to my academy team for being great guys, and shout out to the sponsors of Team Liquid for keeping me clothed and fed. And obviously, shout out to you for bringing this back, because I don't know if the fans know, but ever since you left Team Liquid, I was like, come on, man, when are you bringing the podcast back? When are you getting your face back on camera? I was really trying to push you to do it during Worlds as well. So I'm glad that this is finally happening. Proud of you.
Thanks, man. See you next time.
Catch you later.
All right, bye.